30 years ago, the 80-kilogram Spaniard Miguel Indurain won 5 Tour de France and 2 Giro d'Italia based on his strength in the time trials, where he made huge differences to his rivals that he patiently managed in the mountains. Today, the 61-kilogram Belgian Remco Evenepoel from Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl wants to follow in his footsteps, and thanks to various magic tricks, win like Big Mig did in the Grand Tours based on his strength on the flat and endurance in the mountains. Evenepoel is already a marketing monster, and the UCI will do anything to raise him to the altars. Do you want to know his story? Without further ado, let the show begin. After a 2021 full of ups and downs following his injury in Lombardy, where he was later investigated for doping after his director David Bramati removed a strange substance from his pocket, Remco Evenepoel returned at the beginning of 2022 full of new energy and motivation. His director Patrick Lefebvre designed an ideal calendar of racing for him, with only one major stage race, the Volta a España, which has had the most time trials in recent years. Thus, he began his preseason in Alicante, Spain, where he met Tadej Pogacar and Victor Campenaerts in the famous Altitude Hotel, with its hyperbaric chambers owned by doped ex-cyclist Alexander Kolebnev. Following this, he immediately improved numerous records and climbs in the area. In addition, this year, Remco wanted to change his physiology by increasing his body mass, and of course with gym work and no suspicious and strange substances that change your body suddenly in a few months. This will be his third major physical change in 3 years in search of becoming the total cyclist. And as seen in the beginning of the season, he's on his way to it. After cancelling the Volta a San Juan and preventing us from seeing a new Gonzalo Najar in action, Evenepoel decided to start his campaign in the Volta a la Comunitat Valenciana, where already in the first stage, in his season debut, he showed just how well the preseason in Alicante had treated him. Right at the end of the climb, to the mountain of Torralba del Pinar, a small second category pass, Remco showed all his power, and with a sustained attack was able to drop the Spaniard Enric Mas, and went straight to victory, gaining a lead of 16 seconds from the Russian Alexander Vlasov, and more than half a minute with the group of favorites and just 2 kilometers on a false flat. The most surprising thing about this performance is that Evenepoel showed a power of 6.7 watts per kilogram. Incredible for this stage of the campaign, and of course, at a level of the most elite sprinters on the planet. Again, the hype for Remco Evenepoel grew among those who had stopped believing in him, but just 2 days later, at the top of the Antinas del Maigmo, the former Belgian footballer was cut off in a section of Cerrado before a powerful attack by Vlasov. On a side note, this season Bora Hansgrohe have already stated that without Peter Sagan, they will try to fight for all kinds of Vuelta and general classifications, and with the signing of the Russian from Astana, Kazakhstan, they have already made it clear that they have a very strong lineup to achieve it. The lanky rider entered the finish line looking very fresh, 14 seconds ahead of the Ineos Spaniard Carlos Rodriguez, and 41 seconds ahead of Evenepoel, who could not get the overall win, but instead settled with second place behind the Bora rider, a good result to start the year. Thus we arrived at Evenepoel's second competition this season, the Portuguese Volta ao Algarve, a competition that may seem second tier, but is very popular among major teams like Ineos, Groupama, UAE, Emirates, Jumbo-Visma, and Bora Hansgrohe because of its great weather and location near Spanish medical recovery centers. Remco Evenepoel kept the great memory of his victory in 2020 in this Vuelta, in which the local government, taking advantage of the fact that he is the biggest marketing product of his generation, made a statue of him in the purest Samuel Sanchez style. This was a place, as the Belgian himself said, he had only been once in his life, the Alto de Foia. However, on this small Portuguese mountain pass, Evenepoel went much more unnoticed this year. The stage generated a lot of interest when Bora's Colombian Sergio Higuita was heading straight for the win, but Jumbo's Norwegian Tobias Foss collided with him, and they both went to the ground. This mistake was taken advantage of by Groupama's David Gaudu to take the partial win, but what about Evenepoel? The quick-step rider came in 6th at the finish line, And as always, he preferred to make gestures when entering the finish line, because as a good little star, he must be noticed wherever he goes. Who knows, maybe they will make him another statue on that Portuguese mountain. But just then, Remco was developing his Indurain side, preparing for his most monstrous performance of the year, and he would show it the next day in the time trial in Tavira. It's pretty sad that a 5-day tour has one of the longest time trials of the season, but that's cycling these days. While riders like Grant Thomas or Jonathan Castroviejo tried to give their all in their first time trial of the season, Remco was preparing to face the 32 kilometers of the day with an undulating profile from the second half of the course. Just then, perhaps because of that spectacular increase in muscle mass that has made him heavier and more powerful, he began to perform the greatest exhibition of this cycling season so far. Fully attached to his bike in an aero posture that is truly incredible to behold, Evenepoel showed a cadence unbecoming of February and took 51 seconds off the European trial champion, the Swiss Stefan Kung, at the first checkpoint. You heard right, 51 seconds to one of the best time trialists in the world, who that day was setting the best times in less than 20 kilometers on a flat terrain and without differences in the wind received by each one. The differences were so beastly that his own director Lefebvre had to tell him to lower his power in the last stage of the time trial to pull 58 seconds ahead of Kung and more than 2 minutes ahead of the 10th placed rider. Of course, Evenepoel was the leader of the competition and at the same time sentenced, but the data is much spectacular if analyzed in cold. Evenepoel rode that time trial in which he was carried away in the final part at more than 51 kilometers per hour, while Kung did it at 49.8, more than 1 kilometer per hour difference between first and second classified. This speed is also higher than the one achieved by Tadej Pogacar in the first time trial of the 2021 Tour de France, with similar characteristics and even shorter distance than this one in the Algarve. We are in February in a minor objective for Remco Evenepoel. It is clear that, at least in this time trial, this short freckled man can fight toe-to-toe with the best in the Grand Tours. And in fact, it was the Belgian himself who said he wants to win them in the time trial. In post-stage declarations, he did not hesitate to comment that he doesn't care about mountain wins if he manages to win the overall. They are teaching him to be less impulsive and to know how to manage his efforts. And he believes that if they increase the number of kilometers against the clock in the Grand Tours, he will be able to win them. A direct message to the UCI to take advantage of the greatest product they have created in years? What we do know is that he didn't quite put his words into practice when he came out against all the attacks of Daniel Felipe Martinez on the last day on the Malhau Pass and again took the lead of the group in the last kilometers of his stage, which this time was won by Sergio Higuita, another Bora rider, by the way. Evenepoel entered the finish line celebrating seconds later, satisfied with his new superpowers. He knows that if he can hold his own in the mountains, he'll be able to blow the others away in the time trial. We'll see if he does it when and where it matters. How do you think Evenepoel will look this season? Feel free to comment below.